social media, content, and strategy. In these times of COVID, how are you putting together your media marketing message? Great questions to ask. And that's why on our show today, I have Melissa Conn. She is an expert in these matters. Melissa, how are you doing today?
Great. How are you today, Chuck?
Fantastic. I know we've got so much to talk about, and there are so many directions we could go. But I want to kind of hone in on what companies are doing now and how they are pivoting their messaging and their content and their social media strategy. But before we do that, did you bring anything for us today?
I sure did. I have my Pete's Cup.
Yay. All right. Tell us about your Pete's Cup.
Well, Pete's is a West Coast coffee company, kind of like Starbucks. And I actually prefer them better. And we went to a trip over to Colorado and had to make sure we got a cup to just for our visit. So.
Okay. All right. So that's your go-to cup in the morning then?
Yeah, it's big enough. You can see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, like I said, so many directions to go, but why don't you tell us about you, who you are, and your story?
All right, I'd be more than happy to. So, all right, you introduced me as Melissa, and overall, I'm a digital marketer. But what does that mean? What is my focus? And my focus is demand generation. Let me tell you how we got there. For the past 15 years, I've been doing digital marketing, and I started when Google Analytics started. At that point, I was a graphic designer, and I liked doing advertisement, but I didn't know if my ads were effective. And so when I kind of got the insight into Google Analytics and all that data, I was like, that makes sense. These two things go together because digital marketing is half data, and half visual and half messaging. So from there, I've just been working on my career and learning every platform I can. And I'm big on the strategy portion on how all these pieces come together, including like the development of your websites, paid campaigns, social, your brand, your messaging, and how they all work together.
Okay. And I worked with Melissa, you and I worked together before. I was not in marketing, although maybe sometimes I think I could do marketing, but maybe not.
I think you got a good handle on it. I really, I'm impressed.
All right. But I'm just an HR guy, but you were marketing, you were doing the social media stuff. You were amazing. In fact, you did some really cool stuff. I remember seeing you were looking at bringing drones in. You were doing some really amazing things. And that was pre-COVID, correct? So let's talk about now. Let's talk about what companies are doing. We'll talk about, I don't know, let's dial it back real quick. Talk about social media marketing and content development overall. So let's lay a base there and then talk about how companies have to change and adjust as the world has changed and adjusted.
Okay, absolutely. So just like you mentioned the drones, a lot of social media marketing is the content. What does content mean? Content is the imagery, the messaging, your voice, and how do you share this voice? And a lot of it's branded as well. So there's a difference where, taking drone shots of your business, that demonstrates your brand. It's not generic. And that's what users want to see. They want to see real people engaged with your business, with your services, your products. And they want to know, what the value is, what your core values are. Because even now, like with COVID, customers and potential clients, guests, they're more aligned with businesses that are aligned with their core values as well. So that's why showing your business's personality, not only pictures of your services, but showing your business's personality is important among your social media. And you have to understand that Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever you're using, you don't have to use them all because they don't necessarily apply. They have to, each one is individual. Each platform has a different demographic. And so, and everybody on these platforms interacts with this content differently. So like videos perform really well on Facebook, but yeah, you don't really do videos so much on Twitter, do you? Right?
No.
So it depends on that platform on how you're putting that content together. So it doesn't mean you can't have the same message, because it takes a long time to put content together. You have a whole branded photography session, and this costs costs you a couple $1,000s. You have to make that work. That has to stretch among all your channels, and there has to be some longevity to it. So it's not just like a core focus just for Facebook, for Instagram. It's holistic too.
Okay. And I remember when you say, and I love that, show personality. So it's not just, oh, look at this picture, look at that picture. I can remember, and we worked for a resort company, you would do sometimes a drink, right? A drink of the day or drink of the month type of thing. And it was a fancy drink, and it was set up in the pool area, and you would blast it out there, correct? So it was showing the personality of that resort. I also remember you doing contests, correct? Different contests on Facebook, and you were selling rooms on Facebook too. And I thought that was an amazing concept at the time.
At Facebook, I will say social media, especially Facebook, because the typical age group on Facebook is going to be more 30 to 35 to 40 plus. And this is where you're going to reach an older demographic as well. And so those are the people, I mean, yes, our millennials have money, but these are the people that have more purchasing power. It all depends on your product too. So with that, and, talking about the drink and holding the drink, we had different brands. And one resort, it was great to hold the drink and show this party drink by the pool with all this stuff in it. But in another resort, it didn't necessarily apply so much. That wasn't that wasn't the brand. That wasn't the personality, right? For the brand and the personality and the value, all these things go together.
Okay.
So, or maybe for one resort, we'd have to tweak it and do something, a little bit different. And then ultimately, in the end, you want to get that user generated content. They call it UGC. So this is what your users generate, and that's what gets your engagement. And then you don't have to do any work. No, not that you don't have to do any work, but you can use those Instagram photos that people tagged you in. And you say, hey, tag us on your visit, tag us with your product, right? You encourage it. And people love to see that. Not gone are the days of stock photos. Remember, there'd be stock photos.
Oh, right.
Beautiful, and the models are beautiful, and they're all made up, and it's not real. It's just not reality. And think about like how even like Facebook, they use user generated content in their commercials, in their messaging. Microsoft does it. The big tech firms, they use their user generated content. All of it will be user generated content, but they will use it as a part of huge advertising campaigns. So you can see the importance of it because people identify with it. And then that tells you how people interact with your brand, your product, whatever you have going on. And then you can mimic that. Okay, people love this. And now how can I elaborate upon this? How can I explain this product more? And kind of use that as inspiration to create your own content, your messaging.
Okay. So let's talk about what's changed. So the times of COVID, as we are recording this, and do you have any good examples of companies that have pivoted, shifted, I should say, their strategy? Tell me what's going on now, what needs to be done, and some examples of companies that you think have done a good job of that.
Absolutely. So now marketing happens in general on this backdrop of COVID. It's always there, and it's something that we have to consider when we're communicating. So you can't just go and the business plans have changed. How companies are generating sales, how are they reaching their customers? That pushing that foot traffic is not their goal anymore, but you still have to distribute a product. You still have to make sales. And so one example I actually do have is Pete's Coffee. Hold on, Pete's Coffee.
Okay, Pete's Coffee. That's right.
Yeah, just in case Pizza's listening, they can DM me with any monies for that promotion. But yeah, so Pete's Coffee, and this is uber simple, uber simple example, and you saw a lot of companies do that, but Pete's is a coffee house. It's a storefront, just like a Starbucks. You go in, you get your cup of coffee, and you get a Danish. So they immediately had to shift to changing their business model to doing a subscription service, right?
Okay.
And then there you got that residual income there to where somebody's doing a 6 month, subscription service and doing the delivery for them. So they had immediately stopped pushing storefront, come see us, coupons, things like that, to shifting towards the subscription service, which gives them the long-term monies and the delivery service. And you saw companies doing that across the board. You saw restaurants that were really successful start to promoting takeout, start showing more pictures of how things are packaged. So, an example, like you're a restaurant, because you're changing processes and procedures, and this is what you share on social media. You let people know what you're doing. Take pictures of your bag that's all sealed up, and show how that delivery happens and demonstrates it. You can see it across the board. And so I call it like a 3-step process or
Right.
ideology. Is you want to sympathize, right? Because you can't pretend this isn't happening. You want to relate, and you want to recognize. So we're going to sympathize with that customer. So for example, the hotel industry, what did they do? They said, you know what? Stay at home now so we can travel later. Now that seems like the complete antithesis, right, to making money, right? But if they didn't recognize and relate to their guest and say, hey, come in here and, endanger yourself, not that you would, have this guest perception who's traveling, then your guests wouldn't relate. You would go by the wayside. So that's why, like with Hotels.com, their Captain Obvious that they have, and he's wearing
right.
Yeah, it's a great character. I love him. So they were getting ready to launch a campaign about Captain Obvious, and they were going to show Captain Obvious on a plane with no mask on, all these people around, and he was going to dip his hands into some yummy treats, and shout out. And so they immediately, and of course they spent plenty of money on this campaign. They had to stop it immediately as soon as this happened. They had to shift gears, be fluid, and realign themselves with what was happening with the times.
Wow. Interesting.
And so they came out with Captain Obvious, but Captain Obvious in the promo is he's sitting by himself. He gets some hand sanitizer in his hands. And then he dips into the bowl of popcorn, right? Implying you're home, watching movies, you're by yourself. And it really, I think the slogan was like hotels.com, stay home for now. Captain Obvious is, social distancing, and so should you, And knowing, because what would have been the result if, especially because the hospitality industry, entertainment industry, restaurants have been hit the hardest by this, and they wouldn't be able to, of course they've had to change their business model, and you do need to talk about cleaning procedures, no contact check-ins, whatever you're doing to make people feel safe and keep them coming. But what do you think would have been the result if they didn't sympathize, they didn't relate, and they didn't recognize what was happening?
Yeah.
You're like, hey, look, here's this beautiful pool. Come lounge. And they showed an image of, all these people by the pool lounging. It would have completely been a misfire. Yeah. And they would have gotten backlash on it, and people wouldn't identify with that.
Yeah, it's funny you're saying that, and in my mind, it's kind of reverse of what they should be doing, which is, hey, we want you to come to these hotels. We want you to use hotels.com.
Yeah.
But now we're telling you don't use hotels.com. And they're thinking that's going to get them more mileage than saying, please use hotels. So it's almost like this weird reversal of psychology, but I guess it works, correct?
Yes. Well, like I said, what would the result have been if, especially when, in the first couple months, and a lot of states were on lockdown, What do you think the result would have been if they were
Oh,
like,
sure.
book a room? If people would have been outraged, like, oh, do you believe this? Yeah, because on social media, another part of your strategy is that reputation management.
Oh, yes.
There's another
Okay.
component there. And you have people leaving bad reviews, bad comments, and then what happens, your Facebook post, your Instagram, whatever, doesn't get the engagement, or it does get lots of shares and not the type of shares that you want. So yes, does it make sense? And that's what's so difficult about it, right? And so with this, well, what's happening right now, this gives you, strategic communication skills. And these are things that you can use beyond COVID-19. This was a hard lesson for lots of businesses. But beyond this, you learn this lesson and you understand how to do this. If you have a PR crisis, you're going to be able to manage it a lot better. And so, like I said, you got to sympathize with the public. You got to recognize what's going on, and then you got to be able to relate to them. So, and that can go through even when we don't have a time of crisis. You do have to be able to relate with your audience. So fundamentally, if you're able to relate with them, you're able to expound upon that and be able to create messaging that they can identify with, and that's supportive. So you can take these lessons now and move them into the future. So
Okay. So let's talk about those lessons. So if I'm a business now and I'm considering developing, and maybe, I don't know, I want to say I probably should have thought about this early on, but maybe I didn't. And I'm considering developing my social media strategy now during COVID-19. And I liked how you actually said, and this might be part of it, but you're taking viewers almost behind the scenes, showing them this is how your items are packaged and this is how they're handled, correct? But why don't you expand on that? Because I think that's a fascinating aspect.
Well, as businesses have changed their procedures and processes, you do want to share at all times with your guests. And we're going to talk, we'll talk specifically about COVID. Have employees gotten better training? Talk about that. Are you cleaning your store every day? Are you having professional cleaners in? There's fogging treatments that people do. There's some interesting things. So yeah, you want to demonstrate internally what you're doing to keep people safe. Show your employees with their mask on and their gloves on, and demonstrating these skills as well. And that comes through, and it's okay. It doesn't have to be a professional video and a professional photography session. But our phones do a great job, especially if we're just doing it for social. They do a great job of demonstrating it, and it gives that feel of it being more natural. It's more real. And going back to that user-generated content, it's not this, beautiful, professional, stylish thing, but this is actually what's happening. So you could use your phones to do these things and just demonstrate. You just got to think about the steps and what's important to your guests and what the pinch points are to your customers. What are their challenges or their concerns? And then what are we doing to make sure that we're alleviating them? And then now we have to demonstrate them and talk about them. And then, of course, you have to follow through with them too. So.
Pinch points. You use the term pinch point. What's a pinch point?
Like a pinch point. So like guests are concerned or customers are concerned. I don't feel comfortable going in the store. I don't feel comfortable eating this food. Whatever their concerns are with interacting with your products or service, I don't feel comfortable. Maybe you have a bunch of clients you have to show, and you have a lot of face-to-face meetings. Maybe you're an attorney. You got to demonstrate that, yes, you're wearing masks. Yes, your staff's wearing masks. Yes, you have a requirement. So people don't feel insecure and they feel safe about coming into your environment, and trying to get back to business as normal too. That's the end goal. We're dealing with this. This won't be here forever, but the end goal is to have your business operate as normally as possible, given the challenges and the circumstances that we're in.
Okay. So given this, do you think consumers are smarter now than they were, or maybe they're just more aware with all the social media, maybe being able to see behind the scenes they're asking these questions, or I'm just, it seems like people are smarter now.
Oh, they are
more aware.
Well, they are more aware, right? We make them more aware. The more you post, The more you share, the more you write blogs, the more you inform, the more aware they are. And it's better for people to be more aware than less aware. So if they're less aware, then there's misunderstandings, so you have to be very transparent. So there's what transparency.
Oh, there you go. I like that. And I'll tell you, even for myself, I'm going to dinner tonight, but the restaurant, and I went on an app. We've given so many free promos today. I'm not going to give one more, but I went on an app. I made the reservation, but I was looking for restaurants that allow outdoor dining because I'm not going in inside at this point. Even though in Florida we're wide open, but it's fun to see. The restaurants will list some of the things they're doing, but they give you the chance of reserving outdoor dining now. So I see these little changes.
Yes. Yeah, there you go. That's the same thing. Because think about this process that you go to. You go into a restaurant, and then you're looking at reviews, and you do look at Google. Google's just as important. Like your Google business page is just, especially if you have a storefront, and you're more of a localized business, that is just as important to post those images that you're sharing on social. Put them there. Put the captions on them, explain what's happening. And just think, you want to go there, you want to look and see, are there outside places? I'm going to look at the reviews. I'm going to look at the pictures. And then I'm going to go to the site. And then you see that, and you have outdoor dining options. And you guess what? You'll go back to that restaurant. I do the same thing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out to eat. But I don't really feel comfortable being in a restaurant full of people because the restaurants are open at 100%. Okay, good for the restaurant, but I'm going to choose to be outside. And so it's the same thing. I'll choose a place to go outside, and that's something that you would talk about as a restaurant. The place that you're getting ready to go to, or obviously they're a step ahead. They're making sure that you can reserve a seat there. So all these things are included from the posting, to your website, everything that you do to make sure that your clients, your guests, whoever your customers are comfortable, they're confident, and you're transparent, and that's your messaging, and that's what you're putting out there. And you cannot pretend like it's not happening.
Right. I like that. I like that. That's a great tip, folks. That's a great tip. And if I have to summarize for you, I will. It sounds like take what's important to your customers. So find out the pinch points, what's important for them, and then start crafting your messaging, your social media messaging towards that, whether it's they want to see behind the scenes what's going on, whether they want to see how they're going to show up and participate and take advantage of your goods and services, but you want to think those things through in a process. Correct? Did I get all that?
Absolutely. And what you're doing for your employees. If you changed, let's from an HR perspective, did you change your sick policy? Did you to ensure that employees had more sick days? Did you offer more leniency? Do you give them, the 2 weeks off if they have to be quarantined? People like to know that, right? Because that tells them that they feel like they're more safe. Employees aren't coming to work sick, so that's not a concern. So you're changing policies. You let them know. It doesn't mean it has to be an HR paragraph, right? Where there's very boring text and all these other things.
Right.
It can be, we love our employees, and guess what we did for them to protect them and you.
That's awesome. I get it. So let's fast forward now. Let's talk about the future and how this is right now, how that's going to affect the future of social media after the pandemic is over.
So yes, we'll go back to our users, followers, whatever, being more increasingly knowledgeable. This will continue. They will continue to want this transparency from you. And those are the things that you'll have to stay ahead of. And be very cognizant of what's happening in each state too, as bans are lifting and we're moving on to the future. Let's say you operate a business in a couple states. If one state's still a hotspot, you still have to continue with that messaging. But as other states are opening up and cases are going down and people are feeling more comfortable with this, then you can go back you can go back to your more traditional strategy. But like I said, you're going to take these lessons with you, the things that you do now and that you practice now, and have more of a strategic eye and more strategic communication in your messaging, understanding your audience, understanding your followers better, and what their expectations are, and keeping your eye on that prize. What are they saying on the phone? What are people saying when they call? What are they looking in your reviews? And so now you're going to be more ahead. This is going to help. You're going to be a step ahead of any issues that you might have or complaints that you have, because we always have disgruntled customers, but it's going to help you keep an eye and keep ahead of it too, and understand that transparency portion.
Awesome. So I know we're getting down on our time, but let's talk about measurement. And overall, how can businesses, or is there a rule of thumb for measuring the impact of a social media strategy?
Absolutely. So everything's always, it's a numbers game. Everything you do, email, whether you're doing social media, you're doing paid campaigns, it's a numbers game. So your key is to grow your social media channels. Because you imagine if you have 1,000 followers and one key metric is, looking at engagement, and then you're going to look at likes. So let's say you have 1,000 followers, you get 100 likes, that's 10%, just for that, that's 10% engagement. Okay, that's good, but that's only 100 people, right? So, in the end, how far does that get you? So what you want to do is you want to look at growth, and how are you going to make growth, and how are you going to get that engagement? So you want comments, the likes, the shares, and the Facebook algorithm, it gives more importance to, let's say, video playthroughs, right? You put a 30-second video out there. If you play to the end, Facebook is actually going to deliver your content to more people because they're seeing them play to the end. They're seeing that engagement. You have a post with 1 share versus 10 shares. That's going to get more exposures as well, based on their algorithm, because they do not want to deliver anything that is not relevant. So that comes into understanding your audience. You've got what you're putting out there has to be relevant to them, and that has to be engagement. And so, yes, you want likes, you want shares, you want follows. You'll get follows, from this. You want comments, and those are the key things. So you can go into Facebook, you go in the audience dashboard, it gives you all these numbers, right? It gives you lots of data. You can be completely overwhelmed by the data. Focus on 2 things that are important to you. Focus on 2 things, and they're like, okay, how can I grow month over month? Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen overnight. I mean, it can happen overnight. I've had experiences when I've used influencer marketing, like on Instagram, and within a week I had 20,000 new followers.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, there's ways to get major growth, but hey, maybe you're a smaller business. It's like you and a couple other people, So, but just focus on 2 metrics that you feel are important to you. And then try to get growth there. And it comes to testing content. So let's say you have a history, you've had Facebook or Instagram for a year. And this is obvious though, like what's getting the most likes? What's getting the most follows? Now, how can I take this type of content and divide it up? Can this kind of like be like a parent content? And then I create like child categories of this. So I can take this one piece and I can create a couple different subtypes of content off of it and see if I can gain, traction after that. Because it becomes difficult. You will, even the best of marketers, you'll sit and you'll have a strategy, you'll have a calendar, and you're going to have themes, and you'll sit down and you're like, I don't know what to do. Right?
Yeah.
Like, what's next? So yeah, always, look at your past data. And like I said, choose a few key metrics that are important to you. Are you trying to drive website traffic? That's another one. If that's your goal, that focus there, and don't,
right.
All this other data gives you indications. This will go up, as this metric goes up too, because you don't have one without the other. You don't have website traffic without increasing likes. You don't have website traffic without getting more comments,
Okay. So that's what you do for a living. And anyone could put a Facebook page together, an Instagram page together, Twitter. But I think it's tying it all together, and then taking it forward. And that's what you do for a living. So can you talk about how folks could get in touch with you, and what would be the experience when they do, and what you can do for them?
Well, you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. So, and I do find in these time periods, I've been doing more virtual networking because there's not as many, networking opportunities. So I'm like, all right, well, let's do it virtually. And I do find people are very interactive on LinkedIn. But yeah, you can reach me on LinkedIn. And I also have a website, and it's ourcoremarketing.com. And basically, it's like we have marketing down to a science, because the biggest focus for me is demand generation, right? I have this, it's the data, it's the creative, because I'm very creative. I'm a graphic designer, but I love knowing that how well it works, and then and that's the twofold strategy, and ultimately, and it's if you're putting a social media campaign out there, but you need to have an email campaign behind it as well, because you can't just, everything's not funneled here. And when your messaging is aligned across the board, it's amazing. And you finally pull the trigger on all this stuff. You're amazed how it works. Sometimes I'm even blown away, and I'm like, what?
Yeah. And the return on investment, I imagine, is there, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like we discussed one day, I've seen return on investment on numbers on campaigns that I've done. I had $500 on social I had to spend, and I've been working this local Facebook page, small entertainment venue, 2 bars, two music venues, and they had gotten this national band in to come play. So they had this expectation. I think their goal was like 5,000 ticket sales. A lot. I had like $500 a month to deal with. So, and this is the way it goes. As a marketer, sometimes it goes like that. You're like, oh, okay. Small budget, big bands. So anyway, but yes, leveraging your Facebook page, and I had grown this Facebook page really well. In the end, I had $500 a month. I had $500 a month in the budget, about for 3 months. We had like $80,000 in online ticket sales.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and that was collaborating with the business owner, making sure that sales at the door. There's what's happening. All their employees are selling them too. Encourage them to go online, do the tickets, and kind of putting these elements together. But yes, absolutely, online ticket sales was like $80,000. So I think the ROI was like, I don't know, it was like 400 or 500%. It was just insane.
Awesome. Well, Melissa, we are out of time, if you can believe that. Is there anything I might have missed that you want to share with the group or the audience, I guess?
No, no, I have plenty more to share, but we're gonna cut it off now.
No, that's fine. You have a lot to share, and in fact, I would love to have you back on the show. Once all this is done and through, and maybe in a couple of months. I know there's so much more that you have to share, and probably have many more examples, folks.
Email and CMS systems and CRMs. That's the fun stuff.
Oh my gosh. Whoa. All right. Melissa Conn, digital marketer, social media, brand strategy, content developer. Thank you for being on the HR and Leadership Spotlight Show.